Grief is not a task you can accomplish. Someone told me that, and my reaction was, watch me. I'm Marley with Pacific Widow Solutions, and I help people who've been widowed solve problems so they can focus on grieving and healing. Now, I'm terribly task-oriented, and so I thought, well, maybe most people can't accomplish grief, but I bet I can. But it turns out I was wrong. It is not a task you can accomplish. First, things are really hard. First, holidays that everyone celebrates, and also your first personal events. John died at the end of April, so Mother's Day was coming, and I had already bought and wrapped the gift for his mom. But I hadn't shipped it. And so I texted her and I said, do you want me to send this the way it is, or do you want me to rewrap it? And she said, no, send it the way it is. So I asked someone to take it to the post office for me, and I'm glad I did. You know, Father's Day soon followed. I let John's dad know that this is the last gift that he participated in the choosing. So after this, anything will be just from me, so that he knew how special that was. The first holiday that really was important to me was my birthday. It was a couple months after he died, and I set a plan in place. I decided to work during the day, my normal 9-hour day, so that I would stay busy. But I also asked if I could go visit people that I'm close with and stay at their house for the weekend, because it was right at the weekend. And they said yes. And so I went and I worked on my laptop in their guest room. And they planned some lovely outings, and we had a great time. And I'm so glad that we had a plan in place. Our anniversary followed shortly thereafter, and I asked some ladies if they would go out to dinner with me, and they all said yes. I told them why. And I chose a restaurant that my husband would have hated, partly because it's a type of food that I love that he didn't like at all. And I thought it would be good to do something different, something that we wouldn't have done together. And I was right. I had a very nice time chatting with these women that I hadn't seen in a while, catching up. And it was a nice way to spend the evening. Now, I thought I was doing fairly well those first days. And so I decided to knock out my first concert. We went to a lot of concerts together, but especially Danny Elfman. Now, I've been a big fan of Oingo Boingo since, well, a very long time. Since I was about 13 years old or so. And he was too. Not quite as much as me, but definitely went to some shows. And so Danny Elfman had given his Coachella performance in 2022, and I made an enormous effort to go to his October show that year. And John wasn't sure he really wanted to go with me. He wanted to stay. We were on an international trip, and I had specifically planned it so that we would be back for that show, and he wanted to stay longer in Spain or Germany. And I was like, nope, gotta be back. I think Danny Elfman's gonna give a concert. We need to be there. And I'm so glad we did. We really, really enjoyed that show. But I think that's the last show we went to together. I could be wrong, but that's my recollection. And so when I heard there was a Danny Elfman concert, I decided to accomplish that, to go and attend and get that first out of the way. So I asked a friend to go with me and his family, and they brought additional family members that I hardly knew, but it was fine. And so there was a fairly large group of us, and we went to this concert. Well, I had to travel for this. I drove a couple hours, and they found me a room at a neighbor's house, and we went. And it seemed okay at the time. I wasn't enjoying it like I normally would, and I started pacing. And I didn't even really recognize that's what I was doing, but I was in the aisles walking up and down and just feeling agitated. So I went home, slept. Next day I got up and I had planned to work. Like, it was on a, I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday night. So I went to Panera, I took my laptop and I was working at Panera, and I just started sobbing and I couldn't stop. And so I eventually called my boss and said, I can't work today. And he's like, okay. And I went to the car and I took a nap and tried to recover from the crying. And eventually I recovered enough to drive myself home, but the rest of the day was pretty much shot. And my friend ended up calling me and saying, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, not real good, man. And he's like, yeah, I wondered. And he had noticed, but he didn't say anything because he hoped I'd get it together. But yeah, I didn't even realize how bad it was. But my friend did. So I will say that didn't work, trying to knock out my first Danny Elfman concert. It was terrible. Yeah. But the other thing that I felt like I needed to do that maybe most people wouldn't need to do, I think went okay. When John died, I was away for the weekend. I was with a girlfriend. We were at a condo out in the desert, which is a couple hours from my house. And the specific moment they called, we had driven an additional 45 minutes into the extreme wilderness. I didn't even think I had cell service. And we were watching the sunset over the Badlands. Beautiful viewpoint. Off-road, you gotta make a significant effort to get there. Well, I needed to go back to that condo. And so I asked someone close to me to meet me out there. And he went with me, and we went in and just kind of got the first visit to the condo out of the way. And I'm so glad that he was there to help me with that. And we just kind of took care of it. And like I said, firsts are hard. But once that seemed all right, I asked if we could go out to the viewpoint. Because, I lost so much when John died, so much of who we were together, that I wanted to make sure that I didn't also lose this viewpoint, because it's really stunning and I love it. But I was worried that it would be too much. So we went out there together and got it out of the way that first trip. And I'm so glad that he was with me for help. Now, when I started to think about Christmas, I knew that would be difficult. John loved Christmas. And, every year he would go to a specific store and buy a whole bunch of things that he thought were treats for me, food, and he'd put them in a stocking. And it kind of annoyed me at the time because he didn't always get it right, but sometimes he did, whether or not I would enjoy it. But I thought, well, he's not paying enough attention because he should have known I wouldn't like that. Well, as I was cleaning out some things on his side of the bedroom, I found a gift card. He had made a return, and so it was fairly significant. It was like, it was a fairly big gift card. And so I ended up going to the store and buying myself random treats without really looking at them. And I stuck them in a bag, and I got enough that I could use them almost as an advent calendar. So I put them in his closet a month or two before. And then each day during December, I pulled one out at random as a little gift to myself. And that I loved. That was great. But I also knew that doing the usual Christmas things without him wouldn't make me happy that year. And I had wanted to go to Italy since I was a young teenager. And our 25th anniversary trip was going to be to Italy. And that's the trip I canceled because it was 2 weeks after he died. So I decided to go to Italy for Christmas. And I asked a couple of girlfriends to meet me there a couple days after Christmas. Spend Christmas with your families, and then let's go meet me on like the 27th, and we'll spend a couple weeks touring Italy. And they each talked to their husbands and said, no, I talked to him and he's fine with me going with you the whole time. And I'm like, oh, that's lovely, but don't you want to spend Christmas with your family? And no, we'd rather go with you. And they didn't even really know each other, but it was lovely that they were willing to do that. And so I planned a trip where we hit like 5 cities, locations really, and experienced it together. And we chose Rome as the start on purpose because a lot of the things I wanted to see in Rome were outside. And I knew that inside things might be closed. And so we went to Rome and Milan and Chianti and Tuscany, and Florence. And we really focused on art and food. And it was a really spectacular trip. And vastly different than it would have been with my husband. And I'm so glad we did it. And I'm so very glad that they were willing to come. And I think all of that to say, you might need a new plan for the holidays. And maybe you don't go to Italy, but maybe if you normally host, you ask if someone else will host this year. Or if you have specific things that you would do together, choose something new that maybe your late spouse wouldn't have enjoyed and really experience them for yourself. There's a song by the Interrupters called Title Holder. And it says, fight like a title holder, stand like a champion, live like a warrior, and never let them break you down. And I really felt like that first year, all those firsts, were kind of a battle. But I'm so much stronger for it. And you can be too. You can reach me on my Instagram and YouTube, Pacific Widow Solutions, or email pacificwidowsolutions@gmail.com. Take care.